Hello fans and friends across the universe and welcome back to my channel from me to you. My name's Keir Smith. Now I've always thought that if there's one theme that runs through all of Paul McCartney's post-Beatles albums, and if there's one word that I would use to describe these albums, it would be eclectic. Pretty much all of Paul's post-Beatles albums are stylistically diverse, and he creates as many odd and quirky pieces of music or songs as he does, say, standard and traditional songs. Paul is most definitely a restless spirit and he's always looking for some new musical avenue to go down. He's never satisfied with his music being pigeonholed as one thing or one genre. And this restless spirit seems to run through all of his work. Take Wings' debut album, for example, Wildlife, and it opens with that rather rough rocker mumbo, where Paul yells out these undecipherable lyrics in a rather odd way. And that album ends with an entirely different song with the moody and majestic Dear Friend. On Red Rose Speedway, you've got the beautiful ballad My Love, but then you also get the groovy space rock instrumental of Loop, First Indian on the Moon. Even his more recent albums like New, you've got the standard acoustic ballad, The Lovely Early Days, but then a couple of songs later you've got this beach-driven electronica that is Appreciate. On McCartney 3 you've got the straightforward punchy rocker that is Lavatory Lil, and then the very next song you've got this 9-minute cut and paste soundscaping of deep feeling. And so the point I'm trying to make here is that Paul is forever genre hopping. He never seems to sit still for long, and I've often described Paul's post-Beatles work as one giant white album. There's great, there's very good, there's good, there's some songs that may leave you feeling a little indifferent, and there's maybe even some that you won't like at all, but the whole thing is fascinating. And so I was thinking to myself today, and I asked myself this very question, and I ask you, out of all of Paul's post-Beatles albums, what do you think is his most eclectic? Well, I think, as if you haven't already guessed, it's Wings' 1978 album, London Town. I've always thought to myself that this is a truly odd album, a very strange collection of songs that don't go together at all. And maybe that's the point, a mini white album, if you will. It's called London Town, but it was largely written and recorded on a boat in the Virgin Islands. You know how Paul likes to travel. He'd been to Lagos, Nigeria for Band on the Run, and he took Wings to New Orleans in America for Venus and Mars. I think Paul actually hired as many as 3 boats out there in the Virgin Islands. The Fair Carol boat was the main one where the studio was set up for writing and recording. There was a second one I think called the Somala for catering and accommodation, and a third one which I think was called El Toro, which was purely for the McCartney family. And so to begin with, I think that Wings, who were still a 5-piece band at this point, were largely having a good time, swimming between these boats, drinking a fair bit and smoking plenty of marijuana. But maybe that led to what we now know were some haphazard recording sessions that lacked focus. And that led to some tense arguments within the band that would see guitarist Jimmy McCulloch leave the band, and their American drummer Joe English quit the band. He was homesick and went back to America. And so Wings were a 5-piece and now reduced to a 3-piece of Paul, Linda and Denny Laine. And I've always thought that what this album intended to be was maybe one thing, but what it eventually turned out to be was probably something entirely different. And what we ended up with was, as I say, this rather odd collection of songs with lots of different styles and genres. And I think that this one is his most eclectic body of work. And so I'll take you through the album now, track by track, and give you my thoughts. And so the album opens with the very soft and mellow title track, which is a far cry from the sunshine life out there on the Virgin Islands. This paints a rather gloomy picture of life in London. Paul sings, "Silver rain was falling down upon the dirty ground of London town." Then we're into the energetic Euro disco rock pop of Cafe on the Left Bank. This one brims with confidence and swagger. And then from that we come back down with the wistful acoustic and string laden beauty of I'm Carrying, which is a gorgeous song. And I always liked Paul's slightly weathered vocal here. It's as if he's recovering from a sore throat. And then we get this strange 1 minute plus snippet of a song called Backwards Traveller. Paul clearly liked it and saw no need to take the song any further, so short and sweet it is and will always be. And from that, we then get the Moog synthesizer driven instrumental, the funky cufflink. And so you've got 5 songs there that are all completely different from one another. What could be next? Well, of course, we get this whimsical little song called Children, Children, which Denny sings. It's very sweet with lyrics about waterfalls and fairies and some strange sound effects too. Onto the song Girlfriend, and again, Paul adopts a different vocal style here using his falsetto, and this is a sugary sweet pop song written for Michael Jackson, who would record it for his Off the Wall album. And then side 1 closes with a rather clunky rocker called I've Had Enough. And side 2 opens with a little look, which is dreamy synth pop heaven. Again, this is a very different sound for Wings at this point of their career and discography. And that's followed by the absolutely bonkers Famous Groupies, which is a song that's quite hard to describe. And I would suggest that if you like the Beatles, You Know My Name, Look Up the Number, then you might like this one too. And again, Paul's playing around with vocal styles here and adopts this rather snooty and silly vocal for this one. It's very playful, to say the least. Then he takes the lead vocal on the next song, Deliver Your Children, which is a kind of driving folk rock song. And that song's followed by Name and Address, which is a rock and roll pastiche and a tribute to Elvis Presley. And of course, Paul does a little bit of Elvis with his voice here too. Don't Let It Bring You Down is next, and this is a downbeat, understated acoustic song. And Paul's vocal is interesting again here as it fluctuates between baritone and falsetto and goes up and down in this seesaw style way. In fact, Paul sings, "Up and down your carousel will go, don't let it bring you down." And I think he's going for that with the vocal. And so to round it all off, to close the album, we get a 6.5 minute epic called Morse Moose and the Grey Goose. And if I said that Famous Groupies was bonkers, and it is, then, well, this is equal to it, if not more so. This is pop, rock, disco, and then part sea shanty. And we even get treated to an accordion solo. And it's a song about a guy called Morse Moose, who's presumably in a submarine down at the bottom of the sea. And he's desperately trying to contact the Grey Goose boat, which one night flies away. But I am of the firm belief that with Morse Moose and the Grey Goose, that is how you end an album. I think. I mean, why not? Now, you're free to disagree with me. Of course you are, but I think that's a fair description of the songs on London Town. Now, the sequencing of the tracks on this album has always been strange to me, and I'm assuming that this was down to Paul and Linda, maybe with some input from Denny too. But none of the tracks seem to go together. They all seem to jump about from one style to another. And it doesn't seem to matter if you rearrange the tracks, like if you put Backwards Traveller before or after With a Little Look, it would still feel odd. And the titles of the songs and the topics chosen and the lyrics, they're all a bit weird. Backwards Traveller, Famous Groupies, Morse Moose and the Grey Goose. And musically too, it's a fascinating listen. There's loads going on here, lots of different styles and instrumentation. It's definitely different, but I think it's a brilliant album. It's uneven, it's eccentric, and most definitely eclectic, but I love it. There's so much going on and so much to enjoy. It's the Wings album that I return to most. But what do you think to London Town? Please let me know down in the comments section below. Is this Paul's most eclectic post-Beatles album? Back to the Egg could rival it. I mean, that's pretty scattergun too. And I've always thought that Flowers in the Dirt is all over the shop, and come to think of it, so is New. But as I say, let me know what you think down in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for stopping by and watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you for my next video sometime soon. Until then, bye for now. Ladies and gentlemen, that was